All right. So the first thing I have before we jump into today's UAT session is just a quick sprint update. Sprint 18 ends tomorrow, and we're going to be beginning Sprint 19. Sprint 18 work includes some customer information, application summary, customer additional contacts, upgrading customer lists, and entity management updates and build outs. And then for our discovery work, we still have a lot of items that are currently in discovery. We're working through customer intake, expanding intake to incorporate the WIOA application. So we have some initial conversations, not initial, some secondary discovery conversations happening with some state SMEs on that in early mid-November. So we'll be working on that and then getting that to you guys after we get that shored up there. We're working on expanding case management functionality. We've been working to build out a universal career plan. Still have a little bit of work to get through there, but we'll be getting that in front of you guys a little bit more, hopefully prior to being out for Christmas. In addition to that, we've had some initial conversations on assessments and case notes. We'll be taking closer looks at those throughout the rest of this year. Also working on expanding the exit and follow-up features for updating MSGs and being able to include those in the system to align with WIOA and some new policy changes. We've actually brought some questions to you guys there, and we'll be continuing to build that out. We have some UI kind of put together, and we're working next on the business logic that will inform that UI. And then also continuing work on the entity management stuff as well. An item that's not in here that I'll get added is we've also started some work on the negotiated goals. That's more of a state tool, but you guys do have a read-only access view to that to see your goals. So we're working on building out a tool that will allow us to add and maintain those in the 2.0 system. Do you guys have any questions on that before we jump into today's working session? Okay, so I'm going to start the recording when we actually move into the UAT for cycle 5. But before that, we wanted to review the feedback from cycle 4. However, unfortunately, we did not get any local feedback for cycle 4. We only received state feedback. It is really, really critical in order for this tool to be successful and meet the needs of you guys and your career planners, that we're getting your guys' SMEs that you identified in here and looking at this. And as much as I would love to believe that we built this absolutely perfectly and nobody had any feedback because it was so perfect, I know that's not the case. So I would like to ask that you guys all reach out to the SMEs that you guys identified as wanting to participate in last session. It'll be the same folks participating in this session. We're going to record this because we have quite a few people on the call, but I'm sure there's some that are missing. We really need those SMEs in here touching this, going through this, finding any workflow issues, any bugs, anything that doesn't make sense, because this is when you guys see it, and the next time you see it, it's going to be go live. So we really need to make sure that this is aligning to what you guys need in the field. I will note that we don't have roles hooked up yet, so we probably will be seeing it again once we have roles hooked up. But then we're going to be focusing more on the roles and the views and not necessarily wanting a bunch of cards and feedback for how the actual listings and filters work. That's what this UAT session is for. So I just really want to stress the importance of making sure you all and the SMEs you identify get in here and rigorously test all the items we have identified as homework for UAT. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, Rory has his hand raised, and Olivia, I've already started the recording.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of dropped the ball on that. The two staff members, when you guys had asked a couple weeks ago for last week's session, to have some staff tested that would, people that use it day to day, which makes sense. And for their names and emails, I don't know why. I assumed that like they were on the mailing list. And so when you sent the message out after the meeting last week, with the links to the test site and the management notebook, I just they haven't crossed paths with those two staff members much this week. So I asked today, and I thought that maybe they got the email with the link, so I probably should have forwarded them the links. So they have it now. I checked with them this morning. I said, hey, I got our weekly meeting coming up, and for the IWDS discovery group, I said, have you guys had a chance to play around in there? And they're like, no. Were you going to send us the link to the site that they were showing us in the session? So I'm sorry. I just thought that their emails were added, but it's probably just added so in your end to give them access to it. So I apologize. I was like, hey, did you guys get the email? So, but we will definitely try to get in there and experiment with it and get you, any feedback as soon as possible.
Perfect. I think that's a good point. So just so it's clear and we're all on the same page, we will typically our emails and invitations go out to all the primary extended LWIA contacts. And then we do ask that you forward that on, the invites and the emails we send, to any designated SMEs, because they will be very different across all the different tools. So we want to make sure that you guys are getting the right people to the table, and we're not accidentally grabbing older people who were part of entity and shouldn't be part of customers. And there's just so many LWIAs for us to try to keep track of all of the different career planner SMEs at that level. We could lose people. So our communications will come to the primary LWIA extended SME group members. And then from there, we will have you guys forward that on to anybody you want into the tool. We do ask, though, that you do email us like you did and say, hey, we want so-and-so, because we'll give them everybody full access of UAT documents. So if they have to participate in cycle 1 and then again in cycle 8, they already have access to everything. So I think that's good to just clearly lay that out. So moving forward, everybody kind of knows how the communication is flowing out on these. And I did build cycle 5 with quick links to get back to cycle 4, and these two can kind of be done together. So what we'll do after this session is we'll send a follow-up email out to all the primary extended LWIA SMEs. We'll include links to the recording for cycle 4 and this recording for cycle 5. We'll include the guides for cycle 4 and the guides for cycle 5, and then the notebook. And we can just clearly note, like, if you have already participated in cycle 4, don't worry about that. You can just do cycle 5. If you haven't done cycle 5, please do both. And then you can forward that to your staff, and they'll have quick access all in one email, so they don't have to go dig anything back up. And we'll also include a little snippet in there just about the importance of participating in this UAT and making sure that they're like testing it from how they're actually using the system with customers to make sure that things are working appropriately. So any other comments or questions on that? All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and jump into UAT release 1, cycle 5. So I do have a guide document here that will be sent out. It's also in the UAT folder with all the other UAT resources. This matches the same flow as all the other UAT guides. Just an overview of what UAT is. The section that's different that we really need to pay attention to is our homework areas and due date. So we are going to be taking a much closer look at the duplicate customer search. Duplicate customer search. And we're going to be trying to break it. We want to get in there and we want to try to get duplicate customers into the system, because we need to know now where those holes are so that we can fix them before we go live. So we're going to be rigorously testing this, trying to see if there's any holes, testing real world scenarios that we are experiencing in the field for how duplicate customers may come about, or how you might have a customer come in and you might not be able to find them because a name in the system isn't matching a name that they give you. We want to be able to try to build a system that can be a little more intuitive and help catch those kinds of things before they happen, before the duplicate's created. There's also the verification modal. So prior to creating a customer record, if there is a duplicate found, you do have a verification modal you have to go through to verify you are not creating a duplicate and you have reviewed the records. We just need to make sure that is triggering in the appropriate situations when duplicates have been found. It should be working fine, but just kind of going through that. This is due for feedback by November 5th at noon. I know the state's off on the 5th. Are a lot of the local areas off as well? Are you guys going to be in and working?
Hi, this is Lisa from Business and Career Services in LWIA 7. We're in a state office, so yes, we will be off.
Okay. So what I asked for the state is if you're going to be off, we asked just end of the day on the 4th. Obviously, you know, if you find feedback after the 5th, we're going to take it, but we're going to really be thoroughly reviewing the information to present to the state on the 6th. So if we can get it by the 5th at noon or sooner, that is helpful for us to be able to compile and review. And then this next section is just, you know, how to log them, who to contact if you have issues and information like that. Same information that was provided in all the previous guides. And then we get down to the actual UAT content. So I did note that, actually, let me scroll up here. There's one, no, that's down here, sorry. There is a link to the UAT Cycle 4 guide at the top here, because this is pretty much looking at what you guys have already done. We're just really focusing in on that deduplicating customer search. And if you guys need access to the Cycle 4 for any reason, it is more detailed and has a lot more like information on the various tools. You can access it by just clicking this link. Additionally, if you have folks that are going to be completing cycles 4 and 5, it's just a quick way for them to get back to 4 if they need that. This first section just talks about the create customer record. So we do that by using this add customer button. That's the first thing you guys are going to do is you're going to come to the site, make sure you're on the customer list, and you're going to click the add customer button. That is going to trigger the duplicate customer search. So before you can create a new customer record, the system is going to require that you do a search to make sure that they're not already in the system to minimize any duplicates getting into the system. This week's session, we're going to be focusing on rigorously testing the duplicate customer source feature. We want you guys to try to break it. We don't want you to use like one-to-one matches or just completely different customers that they wouldn't match on. We want you guys to be running real-world scenarios that you've encountered in the fields that have either allowed duplicates to get into the system because it didn't pull back results, or you were able to like, you know, get them through even though maybe there was a flag. We want to make sure that our system is stopping that. And if it's not, we need to know what you searched, like how the customer was originally entered into the system and how you were able to get them in the second time. Now, I do want to note if the system says, hey, there is a match and you see it and you still choose to add the customer, it'll pop up in the verification modal. If you just like are like lying and saying, oh yeah, I verify this isn't a dupe, but it really is, that's just end user error, and that's not something our system can like flag or stop. So that's the only one scenario where yes, you can get a duplicate in, but we don't need that noted. We're going to be logging that verification information so that if we do get duplicates in that way, we're going to be able to see like, hey, the system provided these customers back and so still verified and moved forward with creating those duplicates. So we'll be logging all that. So you don't need a note when you can get a duplicate in just by verifying that it is a new customer when it's really not. And then making sure that you identify any of these issues and log all the information and include screenshots if you need to, is what we're really doing here. I did note that you may need to create a customer first. So you might have to click the create customer button, do a dedupe search. There's not one in there, just to set up that initial customer that you can then run test cases against. I do have test cases already in here that I'm going to show you in a bit, but for your guys' real world scenarios, you might need to be putting those into the system so that you can test up against them. And then this next section just gives some examples of how duplicates could get into the system, just variations in how we spell the names, nicknames versus full names, typos in the date of birth, name changes. I did want to note that not right now, but in the next 2 sprints, we're going to be working on building out a nicknames database and connecting it to the duplicate customer search, which is going to help us pull back even more results that might be applicable. Right now, we're using a formula that's looking at matches based on some and/or statements. But we want to expand that to use a nickname database that can make the system a little more intuitive and help catch things that aren't very closely related. The names may be completely different, but they are nicknames. So that is coming. And then here is some example customers that we have in the system. We have Michael Johnson and his date of birth of 1/15/1990. So this person is in the system. The bold information means they're in the system. And here's some variations you can search on to try to see if you can get this individual in the system again. So we have a couple of those. We have Jennifer Smith, Jonathan Doe, Emily Watson. Emily got married, changed her name. Then we have Anna Jones, who is also known as Anna Marie Jones. So we have some examples here that you can attempt to use in addition to like your real world scenarios, or maybe these just kind of give you ideas and help remember, oh yeah, you know, this happened with this person. Let me see if I can get them in. And then we have our screenshot of what this duplicate customer search looks like. So this is where you're going to be doing most of your testing. And then once you do get a match, if you review it and you're like, no, this isn't a match. So like an example would be Olivia Smith was born in March 7th of 1993. And I come in and I'm Olivia Miller, also born in March 7th of 1993. And the system would say, hey, did you mean this person, you know, this person might have got married or something. Did you mean Olivia Smith? Career planner asks like, oh, you know, have you ever been a Smith? I'm like, nope, always been a Miller. My whole life I've been a Miller. So then they would move forward to click add customer. This isn't a duplicate. This is a whole new customer. They click to add the customer. They're going to get this verification modal just to say, I verified that this is a new customer and doesn't match any of the results that were found. And then that box is checked. We verify, and then the individual moves on to the creating the customer record. So that's that verification modal right here. So that's what we're going to be doing this week in UAT. If folks did not participate in section, cycle 4, they'll also be looking at the customer and application listing and looking at those filters and some of these additional features of like the hamburger and the export and stuff to make sure this makes sense. Again, I do want to note that right now you don't have to be logged in to test this, meaning we don't have user roles. So you guys kind of have like a state view of how this is going to look. We are working on building out user roles, and obviously when we go live, everybody will have a role and they are only going to be seeing applicable customers within their LWIA. So you're not going to be bombarded with like all the customers in the system. However, when we do the duplicate customer search check, that's going to be opened up a little bit more because we want to check across the system to make sure that they're not in there under another LWIA and we still end up with a duplicate in the system. So real quick, we have our duplicate customer search. After I click that add customer button, you guys will come in here and let me see, pull my instructions over actually. I already forgot who I've added in there. Wrong date of birth. So I come in here, try to add Jen, I'm getting back results. I'm gonna want to try, a couple of different things to see if I can break this. And then if you guys do find anything that's not coming back or that is coming back, maybe you're getting 20 records back on a name and it's like overwhelming. Like there's no reason that Olivia Miller should come back when I'm typing in Jenny Smith. Note that as well. So this is where you're really going to be testing things. And then if you do need to add a new customer just to get that first data point in there, you'll just go through and complete this field, all these fields, the required fields, and click that add new customer, and it will add them as a new customer and take you to a draft customer page. We're still working on building that page out, so please don't worry about reviewing it. And then you will just be able to click back to this customers page and then go through the deduping search, trying to break the customer that you just added in or get another one in that you just added in. So I'm going to pause right there. That really covers everything, but I want to see if you guys have any questions or if there's anything we need to look at a little closer.
I know you mentioned that you don't need a username and password, but every time I click onto that test site, it's requiring that I provide that.
And that you click on to,
Whatever the link was, the UAT test site that was sent to me, when I click on it, it brings me to a login screen. And it asks me for my username and then it asks me my password.
You don't have to hit that login button.
So then how do I get?
Just go over to customers or go over to or in this situation, just go straight to customers. Go to the home there, Olivia, on yours. That's what you go to. I mean, that's what you get to on that link probably, but just go right to customers. You don't have to log in.
Oh, so that's the problem.
Just ignore the login. Yep. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Confusing.
Okay.
We haven't got the login wired up yet. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, so that's a great point. Yeah, we're going to be working under this customers tab right here to get into all of the UAT for 4 and 5. Any other questions? All right, well, that is all. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Christy. I always have a question. So I have to apologize. I did not know that we were supposed to forward those information on. So I have not forwarded anything on to anyone, but now that I know, we will definitely do that. I think we invited 3 people. Lisa is one of them. So Lisa, she got the information, but I'm not sure about the other 2. So I will forward them the information that you sent us. And that means the calendar invite too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And we'll do better in our emails that we send out. Maybe we'll like highlight that text because I know there's a lot of information in there. So no, that's all right. I think this is a good conversation. I'd rather catch this now than, 15 UATs in and we've missed a bunch of SMEs. So
yeah, and and to be honest, we use this well, in my case, I don't use the system like obviously our subcontractors do. So they would be the ones that you would want to be testing because they use it daily, so definitely we can obviously do it, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I was supposed to forward it either, so that didn't happen. But one thing that I did want to ask Olivia is that am I correct in assuming we're still putting fake people in? You're not putting in actual personal identifying information, correct? In this system?
yeah, so we're not collecting social security number at the customer record level. So if you have real first and last names you want to use and to change their date of birth, you can do that for this UAT session.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I asked that while everybody else was on here.
Yeah, I think that was a very good question. Jim, I see your comment too. I'm going to note that for like switching first, if somebody gets first and last name mixed up, and make sure we have some catches in the system for that. I'm actually going to just take this and put it in the feedback document, because it's where I'm tracking like all the scenarios I need to go back to our devs with and make sure that work.
So just for clarity purposes, the information, you have the names of the people that you want us to try to kind of break
So
in
those
that-
are
in that document, or do you want us to always just add a new customer and then try to dedupe it?
these are examples of some customers that I have added in. You can definitely test up against these test customers. However, if you have really good real world scenarios of other customers with like different names or different situations, I would ask that you do put in that individual as a new customer. You can use their real first and last name, change the date of birth, and then try testing up against that customer. These were just some pretty basic ways duplicates can get in. But I know from really early discovery conversations, you guys have had quite a few interesting scenarios that have allowed for duplicates to get into the system.
So are we testing to see if we can make duplication without no problem? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, so the purpose of this UAT is to break the system. We want to try to create duplicates. We don't want to do it by like lying through the validation. We want to try to break it and get a duplicate in so that we can find all those holes and all the different ways that duplicates are getting into the system so that we can address those and get them fixed prior to go live.
Yeah, and Robert and the rest, especially locally, this is your opportunity to help build something to where it captures all this, so you don't have to continue to email Jim and Chris and Paula and I and say, "Hey, IWDS isn't handling this." We're hoping to catch all that stuff beforehand and save a lot of those emails. So think of some of those situations out of the box that you get once in a blue moon that might be a good example of what to test during this period.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I'll try to put in some scenarios that and we're not putting in social security number, correct? We just putting in basically those 1, 2, and 3 information.
Correct. So when you create the customer record, a social security number isn't even an item that we're allowing at the customer record at this point in time. So you'll create the customer, you'll use their real first and last name. You can use their zip code if you want, or you can make up a new zip code. Don't use their real email address. Don't use their real phone number. Make up test data for everything other than their first and last name. We really just need their first and last name for the dedupe testing purpose. And then you can just make up, like randomly pick different demographic information.
So
Yeah.
I have a question. In the future, when we are adding the social for like at the application area, what if then we find a duplicate?
Yeah, so we're gonna create a report that runs and continues to check the system for duplicates after customer creation. So as we get more and more data on this customer, like maybe an address or like you said, an SSN, if we identify a duplicate, a report will run that the admin team can look at and go in and determine like, yeah, this is a dupe, or whatever it needs to be done can be done. Maybe it's not a dupe, maybe it's the same address, but somebody's like moved. Then no worries.
But do we have an issue though if we find after the fact a person with a social is in LWIA 5 and another person with that same social is in LWIA 1 and they're both enrolled at the same time?
So you would find that at application prior to enrolling them. And I think at application, what we currently do is whenever a social is entered that matches another social in the system, we stop and we say, hey, this social matches. We need to take a closer look before we move forward with this customer because we don't want them double enrolled in the system.
Right. It's just, it was always done at the customer level. It just
Mhm.
wasn't done at.
Right.
So it's the same kind of alert that's currently in IWDS. It's just that in the current IWDS, I think that yes, that it would happen. It could happen at the customer level where it'll catch that, hey, this social security number already exists. But you're saying that, so now it'll still happen. It just won't happen until the application phase because you're taking that social security number as a required field out of the customer menu, right? A customer creation records, right? I think I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I was
I
just
think-
thinking about it at a different perspective, because these customers come to us, and if, they've been working with us or, getting, trying to get in, and then we find out down the line when we're finally getting all the stuff taken care of, and we're like, oh, you're already over here, then we might have some customers that might be complaining or have some issues. Just throwing it out there from, just a perspective when customers come in, because they try to play these types of things all the time.
Yeah, and we'll have to have a conversation about that and make sure that's part of training of, they might have just a started application in one LWIA and try to start an application in another LWIA. So then where does, we've got to realign that customer, or they might have an open application in one LWIA and be receiving services. Does this happen often that you have customers trying to engage into LWIAs?
When we are close to other LWIAs, we get a lot of customers that try to travel over if they're not happy with, I don't know, waiting a minute, or maybe they received information, or maybe they just didn't know or didn't understand the difference between one office to the other. I mean, it could just simply be that. But because we're right around many different LWIAs, it's easy for the carryover into. So, I mean, I always have my staff double checking from the get-go. And at this point, that wouldn't be the case at this scenario.
Yeah, and we can, when you're doing your search, you have these 3 required fields, but you also have many additional optional fields that you can search on. So when you're trying to get that customer in, you can still collect the last 4 of their SSN. And if they have that in another application, it's going to match on that and pull that customer back to say like, hey, this is already a customer in this LWIA. Email is another good one. Nobody will share the same email. The only problem with email is, they can have multiple emails and who knows which ones they give you versus which ones in the system. And then also phone number is another one. So there are other optional search fields that we're going to discuss as part of the training that you need to use the 3 minimum always. But as a best practice, if you have additional information to search up against that customer, it's just an extra step to minimize that dupe and find them already in the system and be able to build off of what you have, what's already been entered, which is saving time for the customer and saving time for the career planner instead of having to create a whole new customer record just to find out they were already in the system.
Well, that's good to know that it's not just searching the customer area. It's also going, like if we did add that social at the last 4, that it will search customers with applications and have that information from there, because that will alleviate a lot of time when it comes to staff working with customers.
Yeah. And all of our migrated data is going to have the SSNs because that is currently required at the customer record. So during the initial little first, chunk of time when we're searching, almost everybody's going to have that SSN because it is required. It's just as we get further and further along, the SSN is going to be there for more folks with applications and less just customer records. There is a way on the customer profile where you can add that SSN in if you do get it from the customer before the application. So it's not saying you can only get it at the application. There are ways that if you get it, you can add it. And that's another, that search field will always be there. Paul, you have your question, a hand up, and then Jim, we'll go to you.
Yeah. So, kind of going on the lines with what Lisa was saying is that, when a career planner meets with the customer to determine the eligibility and fill out the actual IWDS application right now, that's often where we find that they get that error that says, hey, there's another social security number that's being used by so-and-so, right? And oftentimes then that so-and-so that had the social security number entered had a different name, or a changed name or something to that effect. Or something was typed in just a little bit wrong, on something. And so then the issue then is the career planner doesn't have the authority to correct or change that application, if that makes sense. So like
Mhm.
it has to go through the admin now or somebody who has permissions to do that. And they're in the middle of the appointment, like they're right there with the customer. And so they got to either reschedule or try and get somebody to fix this thing, before they can move on with the application, because it won't let you go on with it. So if on the beginning part where we're doing this customer search and we put these, last four in whatever, but the last four may not be the wrong numbers. It might be, the fourth
Mhm.
one or the fifth one, right? And so then by the time it gets to the career planner appointment, they get that notice, it's too late. Now you got to reschedule or find somebody, an admin that can change it, right? Or, someone that can send it to DCEO and send it. So that's something I would suggest we might need to explore and figure out how we could better, create a flow where that can be corrected, and verified and corrected somehow.
Right. So you're saying like you get the match and it's like, oh, that this customer is already in the system, and so they can't move forward with the application then. They need it corrected.
Right,
Okay. And then they can't really in a sense merge those two accounts to say, no, this is the same person. I need to move forward with them. Their
right,
name is misspelled or their social security number. Yeah, their name was misspelled and now their social security numbers match or something. Um,
right,
But okay, yeah, that's something we can definitely make sure that we're looking at, like, how are we going to handle that so that we don't have a customer just sitting there being told that they have to come back. But I do think we're going to have some workarounds for that with the way Social Security number is going to be handled. And 2.0 that will allow for us to potentially flag um, like duplicate Social Security number. Um, while also still moving forward with the application so that we can merge those two accounts or fix an account while also allowing the customer to move forward. Definitely need to have more conversations on that though. Jim, you had your hand up, I believe.
Yeah, Libby, I think something that I learned from you is that this is going to, this being IWDS 2.0 search, is going to be looking at a lot more fields to deduplicate than what current IWDS. So I'm not sure if everybody on the phone or on the call and even those testing are familiar, because aren't you checking date of birth, email addresses, zip codes, phone numbers also with the dupe? Is that correct?
Yeah, if they put those additional parameters in, it's going to be running all that data up against the data we have for the customer and in the applications to see if a customer potentially had an application at one point in time that matched that data. So email and phone number that might be helpful on because we do know those change. So they might have given you an old email in one app and then updated it, and it might be different in their current customer profile. Um, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of additional all these fields that you can search up against to help minimize dupes getting into the system. And I do think so. The scenarios you guys are talking about, I think those are exactly what we want you guys to be testing and seeing like, am I catching the customer if we get them in here? I know the Social Security one is a little harder because we're not having that SSN entered right now. We are working on getting the customer profile page built out to UAT, and at that point we can put in SSNs. So we may need to, as part of after getting the customer profile UAT fleshed out, have another dedupe customer search UAT session that incorporates both the SSN and the nickname database, and come at this again. We'll have cleaned up some of the things you guys have found, and we'll come back at it, and we'll keep hitting it until we hit it over and over and over again and nothing breaks. Because we know this is really important, like going live. We don't want to go live and end up with, you know, tons and tons of duplicates in the system because there's holes people can get through. Any other questions?
Just one. So I'm having trouble. I don't know if anyone else is having trouble, but I'm having trouble logging into the UAT issue management. That's where we're supposed to be documenting what we find, right?
Yes.
I get an error message every single time I try to log into that. So I'm just wondering, because you know the two staff members that are on my team, you know, if they need to get in there to document what they find, I don't know that they're going to be able to get in there either. I get an error message.
There was if I can find it, I'll forward it to everybody. There was a link, I think I was mentioned last week or the weeks or the meeting or our group meeting last week or the one before. There was, I finally found it. I probably sound like a crazy person because like, no, there was this thing where it's a link and it pings it so you can share the folder with us and it sends you a verification code. But I was like, I gotta find it so they know what I'm talking about. So I think I found it. I can forward it or send it, but there was a specific link. I think it was in initially it was you guys posted it in the chat or sent it in the September 12th or 15th meeting or something, and it's a link that will take you to the SIU teams. I think it takes you to your SharePoint folder, but it then recognizes and like pings you back and says, okay, we're going to send you a Microsoft verification code, and then it sends you that code, and then you go back to the screen, to the web page, and then you type in the code that you just got emailed, and then it lets you in. I don't know if everybody has to go through the process. That's just the one that I've been using to get into the folders. The testing site, like Al reminded us, like that doesn't need a login. Like that link, the staff, you know, your staff users should be able to use. I just forgot to forward the link to my staff member, so that's sorry about that again. For them to start testing the site, but they have started to do so this morning. But yeah, all the folders and things that you have up here, there's a way, I think like they shared the folder, not necessarily access with the entire, obviously we can't get into SIU Saluki SharePoint, you know, the whole network there, but that's the one. If I find it, I'll send it unless you know, you guys know anyone else knows what I'm talking about. It was,
Yeah.
I think it was
I know what
initially
you're
sent out in that mid-September
Yeah.
weekly group meeting. But that's the one you need, I think. And I don't mean to misspeak. I'm sorry if it's different or everybody does have different access now, then please correct me. I'm sorry. I was just trying to remind them that's the one that they would need to use because it's the link that then pings you back and gives you a verification code to type in on the web page, the homepage, and then it lets you into the folder. It's like sharing a folder versus giving someone access to your entire SharePoint, then your network's, you know, entire SharePoint network. It's sharing the folder.
Lynette, can you provide the secure link that you provided in September? Can you provide that to Sarah so that can be sent in the email that we send out?
Yep, we're already on it. We have it
Okay.
all going.
And then if you guys have any issues or any of the individuals you are having doing that testing have issues, they can reach out to Sarah as a single point of contact and we'll make sure that we get them all access and get them in. Sarah has a really quick turnaround time on that, so they should be getting in pretty quickly after they reach out to her. And we can include that in the email you forward to so they all know who they should reach out to. You pretty much just send on what we have, let them know if they have questions, check out the email. It's going to spell everything out, and to reach out to Sarah if they have any other questions.
Yeah, I think that sending us the access to the folder would be great because yeah, every week the same thing happens. So because you guys have the documents like broken up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because I think I don't know what happened, but I just tried. I don't have it either. So it would be great for the access to the full folder.
We'll send the one that Lynette had put together that was getting folks in.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Olivia, I think it would be super helpful if you could you reiterate if everything is working absolutely correctly in the duplicate search, what are we supposed to see? Like, because we keep talking about what, problems and everything and testing it out and trying to break it and all of that, which is great. But if it's working correctly, what should we see so that we know what to look for?
So yeah, so what was her birthday? Hold on. So Jennifer Smith is in there, but she comes back a couple weeks later and is like, "Hi, I'm Jenny. I need some help." And so I'm like, "Okay, whatever." We get to the point where I'm like, "Okay, let's create a customer record for you, Jenny." I type in Jenny Smith and the birth date she gave me, and then I'm like, "Oh, do you go by Jennifer? I have a Jennifer Smith, date of birth, zip code." She's like, "Oh yeah, that's me." Cool. Well, instead of adding a new customer, because she's already in the system, I found her. Instead of having to create a new customer record, she already has a customer record created, and I can just go into Jennifer Smith's name. And she's like, "I typically go by Jenny." This page is still being developed, so don't worry about that right now. But I can update this. Her preferred name's Jenny. Moving forward, I'm gonna connect that a little easier than expecting her to go by Jennifer Smith. That is what we expect to happen. Now, where the system's never going to say, no, you cannot create a new customer record because we found somebody, even if I typed in, so if I type in Jennifer, so right now it says, hey, there's a partial match because I spelled Jennifer a little different. But if it's a one-to-one match, it's going to say, hey, here's Jennifer Smith. We're never going to say you're not allowed to create a new customer record. We will always let you create a new customer record. We can't guarantee that there isn't another Jennifer Smith in the world with the same date of birth, but I'm a completely different Jennifer Smith. So we do say that before you go forward with any 100% match or partial match, you do have to verify that you've made sure that this is not the same Jennifer Smith, and then you can create the customer record. So when I was saying I want you to break the system, but I don't want you to just override the system by lying, essentially. I don't want you to say you did this and verified, and then you were able to create a second Jennifer Smith. Well, yeah, I can see how you could do that, but the system had already flagged that for you. The system had tried to tell you there was somebody and prevent that duplicate. So this is what we would expect the system to do, is bring back when there is a duplicate, bring that result back in the table and give you the option to move forward using them instead of creating a new customer record for that individual. And then you have the hamburger here, so you can get more data columns on the individual if you want to see more information. We don't have WorkNet ID hooked up yet. But as we're doing this too, if you guys are like, hey, it'd be nice to see these other data points that somebody might have, we can expand this hamburger as well. We just have to remember that they're a customer at this point. So not everybody's going to have an application, so we might not have a lot of data to necessarily show, but we can show more as well if it's helpful for giving context on who this person is to make sure that it is a different Jenny Smith. Does that kind of clarify that?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Any other questions? Check the chat. I'm not sure what you mean, Mike. Is that selectable data field 1 month at a time, or can you?
Yeah, when you
choose
clicked on the
months
calendar,
separately?
it looks like all you can do is go back or
Oh.
forward a month at a time. And if they're, older, that's going to take a while to get back to it. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to see,
Yep.
where you can drop down at least a
Mhm.
little bit of selectability on the year to get to it a lot quicker. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions, comments? All right. So again, please feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any questions during the CUAT cycle. We're always happy to send you some more information, jump on a call with you, whatever we need to do to ensure you and your designated SMEs can move forward. With that, I'll go ahead and stop. And Al, it looks like you have your hand up. Is there something you want to add?
Yeah, I just want you all to know that if you didn't get back into UAT for the entity management for cycles 1, 2, and 3, you might want to get back in there sometime because there are a lot of upgrades in reaction to your whatever you found. And there's actually a release upgrade guide in that same folder that you'll see. It says like 24 something, but it's in that same folder, release notes. And if you wanted to know exactly where to find stuff when you weren't digging around, but we did make a lot of upgrades that you can, if you get some time, be great to go see. I want to make sure you know.
Al, can you show us? Do you have a moment to show us exactly so we can all have a visual representation of what you're talking about, just to be clear?
I will. Yeah, hold on a minute.
And while he's doing that, I just want to note, because we still have the UAT recording going for 4 and 5, and I don't want to include it. I don't want to confuse anybody who gets this recording. Cycles 1, 2, and 3 are entity management, and those were different, potentially different SMEs. So we're not asking we're not saying that just because you were included in 4 and 5 doing the customer stuff, that you need to go back and look at 1, 2, and 3 either. That might not make any sense to you depending on your role. This is more for the folks currently on this call. So with that, I'm going to stop the UAT recording for cycle 4 and 5, and then we'll take a look at the entity stuff. Thanks all.